Welcome to It's Personal, Finance Canada. I'm Christine Conway.
And I'm Cameron Conway.
And this podcast is a very personal look at personal finance in Canada. Welcome to It's Personal Finance Canada. I'm Christine Conway, here with Cameron Conway. And if you're in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, or the Yukon, feel free to find us at braunfinancial.com. So this week, I did an interview for the Globe and Mail. And I think actually this has been my third one this year. And it's been really cool. I've had a chance to talk to some really awesome reporters that know their content really, really well. But the reason this one got me thinking is she had a really interesting question for me. And her question was, we've made it through this busy tax season. People are in a position of getting a refund, a lot of us. And yet there's these tariffs, market corrections, the federal election. What are advisors telling clients to do with these refunds this year?
Yes, the important thing is what are advisors telling people, not just what is AI telling people, because that's just a whole other thing. What was the thing I saw? There was a bunch of newspapers that got in trouble because they had this like top 15 books that are coming out this summer, and 10 of them were just fake AI nonsense. So good on the reporter talking to a real person.
Fake AI nonsense. You know what? You showed me a video earlier this week that was completely AI generated, and it completely blew my mind because I could not tell the difference. And it is wild how the deep fakes out there, like you can't even tell anymore what's real and what's not. It's a little bit crazy.
So enough about the end of media altogether. Let's get back to how you answered this question for the reporter and how, well, really, what should you do with your tax refund if you have gotten it already?
Yeah, so the question to me that was interesting is how much of an impact does the current economic condition have on this advice that's being given? And like I said, this is really interesting to me because first off, the advice that we give is largely correlated to your goals. And in that context, they're basically asking me, is what someone wants going to change because of outside environments? And I would say to that, I mean, my goodness, unless there's a job loss or a forced early retirement or like a company's been bought or sold or something else major has happened, for most of us, what we want is what we want. What we're working towards is still what we're working towards, even with all the noise that's kind of happening outside right now. So most people's goals have the tendency to stay the same because they're deeply personal. And all of the stuff going on in the world right now, if I still have the money in my budget and I still have the focus and the intention that I started with, the thing that I'm going to work on is still going to be the thing that I want to work on. But my strategy to get there might have changed completely.
So you're saying part of the answer to what to do with this magical found money from the CRA is not just to go out and immediately spend it.
Well, that's right. Yeah. And you know what? The beauty of found money is exactly that. It's not part of your regular budget. So, of course, some people will need it. And sometimes it's timely money, right? Sometimes it's exactly that infusion of cash that you needed right at the right time to pay a bill or take care of something that has come up. But otherwise, if everything is kind of going well and running smoothly and you're handling inflation well enough, this is a chance to get ahead. And this is a chance to accelerate your goals. And that's what I like about found money. Because if you were a regular salaried employee, of course, some people will make the argument that, oh my goodness, this is just your money you're getting back. Well, yes, but if you have regular withholding, you'll be paying taxes ahead of time to the government, and some of them come back with you because you put money into your RSP. That is now in your hands versus in the government's hands, so it can now be used for your purposes right away. So I'd like to talk about a book that I was reading this week. It's called Buying Time by Daryl Diamond, written in 2008. He was an actual practicing advisor. I'm not sure if he's still in practice now, but he was at the time this book was written. And I know also he was actually pretty prominent in our industry, working with advisors as well.
Yeah, and like Christine said, this was written in 2008. I'm actually kind of surprised how many books Christine has mentioned in the last couple months about that were written in 2008. I wonder if something big and mysterious happened in the financial sector in 2000 made all these people write books about what you should do and what you should not do.
You know what? If we're talking about uncertain economic times, that is a very good point. That was as history bears out, a very, very crazy point of time in history as well. And this is part of the cycle that is regular long-term investing. And I'm not going to go and say that the things that are happening today are normal. They are certainly not. But we have seen ups and downs before. So while circumstances have changed dramatically and are going to change, I think, permanently in some cases over the long term, which is what speaks to a change in investment strategy, I don't think that alone is enough to be a deterrent from all investments. There is still so much good that you can do in the market, and time in the market is always going to be your best friend, even as we navigate some of this chaos. So going back to the book that I was reading, Daryl Diamond, the author, would ask his clients a question about their investment portfolio. And the question was simply, what do they want their portfolio to do? And he put their answer into 4 categories. There was growth, there was liquidity, there was safety, and there was income. And then he would take their answers, assign a percentage to it, and total that percentage up to 100%. So all money for this particular portfolio is accounted for.
Yeah, this is like a lot more practical approach where instead of just like your fixed income portion, your Canadian equity portion, your US equity portion, and your cash portion, this is like a lot more purposeful. And really, this is actually an easier way to describe this to clients.
It just felt so relatable to me because a lot of what we say, even in meetings on the daily with clients, it's personal finance speak, right? It's financial mumbo jumbo. It doesn't make sense to everybody unless
blah, blah,
you're
blah,
kind of
compounding.
Yeah, unless you're kind of in that industry, then you kind of get caught up in it. Yes, and if you ever meet a professional that will say blah, blah, blah for your child in a business meeting, you've found a winner. So as it goes. But yes, this was a brilliant way to look at a risk tolerance questionnaire where a lot of the answers traditionally kind of get lost or people think that they're confusing. So what he's doing, in my understanding, is making something complicated and abstract a lot more easy to relate to. So if I'm thinking growth, and let's step back a little step further. Let's say that not all of your investment, all of your assets have to be considered to be that same portfolio. So if we're saying each pool of money that you have has a job, really dividing them out and assigning their jobs is the first step that we're going to take. And then the accounts that you pick follow those jobs that you've assigned.
Yeah, because typically when people do kind of that risk tolerance questionnaire, they want to buy a mutual fund, a stake fund, or something else from an agent or a dealer or something like that. You'll think, oh, I only have one type of risk appetite. But depending what you're doing, you could have something different for your retirement, something different for some short-term savings, something different for RESP that can kind of go beyond what that final score gives you. And as much as a lot of people don't like these questionnaires, the answer it generates is actually usually pretty accurate. And more often than not, people who try to fudge up and down, they should have stayed in the proper one. And we've seen too many times where if they would have stayed in the proper one, they would have had a much happier time than trying to jump up or down a risk category.
There is some rhyme and reason to it for sure, but I completely agree with your point that absolutely each portion of your money can have a different risk profile because it serves a different purpose. It's not you as a person and your, indelible, never-changing risk profile. It's you moving through life with different objectives, different priorities at the time that then need objectives, risk tolerance, and accounts and strategies that fit with what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and kind of evens out at the end. Even you have like a wide variety of kind of those different risk numbers for different ideas and different strategies, but you can find at the end where you'll kind of end up in that sweet spot. Like we've got some clients where they have like one section of their money, which is like 80 or 100% in equity, but they're more balanced. But then you see, oh, on this account over here, there is a large amount of money in GIC. So the whole portfolio kind of falls within that banding, but different strategies, different accounts for different results.
Well, and that's exactly it. That's where the strategy in the asset allocation has played a role. And in your particular example, maybe GICs made more sense in that particular interest rate environment than bonds would, right? So maybe that's why that decision was made and each account served its purpose. But to give an example, like let's say I'm young and I'm in the accumulation stage and I just want my money to grow. And I go back to Daryl Diamond's kind of 4 areas. My objective is growth. So this is long-term money. And let's say that I'm comfortable with risk. I might answer this question for my retirement account with my growth is at 100%, liquidity, safety, income. Those are all not things that I'm really concerned about. Those are all zeros. And that gives me and my advisor right off the bat a conversation that we both understand with where we're going with this money. And of course, it would be backed up with a proper documented risk tolerance questionnaire. So for this person, in a challenging economic time like this, if I'm saying this is long-term money because I'm young, this investment strategy, I might be more inclined to ride this out. Should I change my investment allocation? Absolutely. That might have to be tailored to what's actually going on. But do I want to keep investing? Do I want to put new money if I have it in the markets? Absolutely. And I mean, Cam and I, when we got our tax refunds this year, we looked at each other and the first thing we said is how much money can we scrape together to put in our accounts? Because it is chaos. And we know that when there's chaos, the prices are going to fluctuate wildly. And dollar cost averaging or lump sums when the markets are down are a great way to get a good rate of return because you're buying something on a sale, you're buying something at a discount, and you have not only that return to fair value, but you also get that company is still going to try and hit their own targets and hit the pricing expectations that the analysts have set for them, whether that's good or bad, right? So there's going to be a little bit of volatility along the way, but you're still getting units, you're still getting shares at a great price, and no one can take those away from you once you've purchased them unless you choose to sell them in some capacity.
Yeah, that strategy kind of works better for someone in a growth mindset. They're trying to grab those lows, throw the money at it. They're waiting until Friday when Trump sends out some sort of message on social media that sends everyone going for Monday. But we should probably also talk about someone who is not in that growth phase, though.
Well, for sure. So let's choose a person who's the same age as that individual we were just talking about. And let's say that they're also saving for retirement, but they just do not like the uncertainty in the current economic environment. It makes them uncomfortable. The nature of the stock market going up and down, they just can't handle it. They're not sleeping well at night, and it is not going well for them. And this could be someone who feels like they're making a sacrifice to save. So they don't want to see their account value go down or they're less comfortable with that. So again, if we go back to Daryl Diamond's example, that person still might want some growth, but maybe it's a lower percentage. That liquidity and income piece might still be zeros for them, but now safety, that word safety resonates to them because safety means preserving capital. It means they're getting to hold on to that initial investment. So when we figured out that percentage for this person, now we're adding in either some GICs or some bonds to give that safety. And of course, that selection would be based on the current interest rate environment. So there are ways to kind of mute it a little bit. Of course, any investments in equities in the stock market, whichever index you're choosing, whichever market or stocks or mutual funds you're picking, when you have equity exposure, that will come with risk and that will come with volatility. And while certain sectors and certain areas move around less or differently under different economic conditions, you still do have to expect that movement as part of the ride.
Yeah, it could be movement in individual stocks, could be movement in the sectors, could be movement in the asset type. There's this one chart I really like I get from JP Morgan, which shows like every single year which kind of like sector class outperformed everyone else in that year. And it's very rare is the same sector outperforming more than 1 year in a row. It would be like 1 year tech is number 1, 1 year tech's number 10, and just this stuff keeps changes and it fluctuates. That's why we talk about diversification, having a balance of value and growth, but then every single one of those has their own type of risks. But the trick is kind of figure out how to kind of blend things proper, get standard deviation down and try and mitigate some of the ups and downs. But you just have to accept there will be ups and there will be downs.
You're right. Those things are never the same. They're like heat maps. They do them in these funky colors, and you can kind of see what the map is for that industry over that particular period of time. It's kind of fun if you're into that kind of thing, like we obviously are. But I mean, there are some guys like, oh man, you hear them all the time on the internet, or you see it in comments where people are basically saying things along the lines of, why wouldn't I be that first person? If I'm young, if I'm saving for my retirement, why wouldn't I be all in growth? Shouldn't everybody be all in growth? Like, wouldn't it be irresponsible not to maximize my potential for rate of return because this is money I need to live off of later? Like, you hear this stuff out there. It's a very, very real thought. And I would say that this type of economic environment is the perfect illustration of why that might not be the best advice for everyone. Because our ability to tolerate risk will determine if we will hold on during these times. And the reason someone might be a little bit more inclined to safety and in a portfolio that leans towards safety, that safety may keep them from hitting the sell button at the wrong time and ruining their plan or permanently altering their plan by letting go of good units or good shares at too low of a price. So you can undo the hard work you've done in the accumulation stage if your risk profile was too high and you cannot stomach the ride. And like I said, everybody loves index funds. There are certainly pros to them. We use them as part of our portfolio composition, even in our firm, because they're a cheap way to access a large variety of stocks when you're following an index. But that being said, understanding sector selection, understanding the rest of it, that too can help moderate this ride. So risk tolerance is as personal as your decision-making process, and risk tolerance has a direct correlation to how successful you will be when you have to make those decisions yourself. And this is why some people, even people that are smart enough to DIY it till the cows come home, will choose an advisor. During these tough times when they're ready to jump off that ledge, this is the protection to keep them from doing it. Someone who has a little bit more insight, who is losing their own mind to all of the chaos and all the updates and information, but maybe has a way of putting it together in a way that makes sense and that can help them hold on a little bit longer. Like I said, that doesn't mean blindly following an outdated strategy, but it does mean not selling at the wrong time to make sure that the overall plan can be handled and managed over that longer term when we're talking about retirement.
Yeah, and I guess another big part is we've been talking a lot about kind of like the ups and the downs, the growth of equity, the growth of stock market, but I think some people will undervalue the savings part of it, because if you're not putting money back into it as it's growing, as it's developing, you'll just have that limited amount of long-term future growth. And we see a lot of times where people will be gung-ho to put in their first 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 into their RSP or whatever it is, but then there'll be no kind of monthly pack to go along with it to make sure that it is not just your growth compounding, it is just new money that's compounding also every single month.
Oh, absolutely. And I would agree that your savings rate is probably one of the most important thing after you've figured out your risk tolerance, because your savings rate is completely and directly under your control. You can make decisions around spending, you can make decisions around lifestyle that determine what percentage of your income you're able to save. If you find yourself in this place where you are reliant on a certain rate of return to get to the portfolio size that you need, you've put yourself in a risky position. You need to be in a position where the rate of return you're expecting is not only reasonable for the type of asset allocation that you've chosen, but it's also something that can test over the long term. And that's why we use FP Canada's long-term rate of return projections that change every year in our own practice. But yes, I would agree that your savings rate, the percentage that you can save, is so important. And when you think about how portfolios work, when you start drawing down on them, so when you're now in your retirement years, when your withdrawal rate starts to exceed your rate of return, that's when your asset base starts to diminish, right? Your pool of money is shrinking. And that's when your financial planner can calculate for you the longevity of that investment. And they can even, for bonus points, add in an inflation factor calculation to show how that inflation further depreciates the assets. So what will this do? This will tell you what the longevity of that money is based on the rates of return that are being used. How many years can this be sustained at this withdrawal rate? And if you have not enough savings and you're overly dependent on that rate of return, absolutely that can be challenging. So how do you counter that? Now, of course, this answer is not going to be for everyone, especially when money is tight, but you counter that by building a big enough pool of assets or having enough hard assets like real estate that you can then sell down the road and replenish this liquid money that you're using to live off of to keep up with the withdrawal rate that you are projecting you have. And I mean, of course, like anything else, if that still doesn't math, if it still doesn't work, people might have to change lifestyle expectation or work longer or do other things. Really, all of this to say that there is a huge mental shift that happens when people start coming to retirement. Like that whole lens that you're looking through is completely different. And the reason for that, the reason I think it becomes so difficult for people is our ability to add back into this nest egg all of our work, all of our accumulation. It retires when we do. It's done. Unless there's like a windfall or an inheritance or a hard asset that's sold. Basically, what you have when you retire is what you're going to have for the rest of your life. And that'll fluctuate based on growth of the asset and withdrawals. So when we get to that point in time where we're now relying on this asset, it's kind of at that stage where the work you had done prior with these found money, with these tax returns, with the regular saving that you build into your lifestyle and your budget, that's when this all tests out. And this is when you can live it out and walk it out in a way that's meaningful and in a way that starts paying the bills and helps you achieve some other longer term lifestyle goals.
So that's probably enough for another one of our random retirement tangents. Maybe we should get back to actually answering the question the interviewer asked. Luckily, you only talked to her for half an hour. We have this. She had a word count. We've got a time limit here too. Exactly. So let's get back to like what was like your advice of what to do right now, technically spring 2025, what to do with that tax refund.
Well, for sure. And I think we've beaten this idea of your goals come first. I think we've talked about that enough. But yes, and looking at the content of what you're invested in and how it serves the overall purpose and the current economic condition, I think we've talked about that enough too. And you're right, we do have a tendency to kind of rant and go on tangents. But if you've been listening to the show for a while, it's kind of our style. It kind of works for us. So I like to use found money to help someone set up a win. And the way that we set up that win is a little bit different based on one really important factor. The first question that I'm asking someone is about their income. So their personal income, their household income, and I mean taxable income from all sources. And like I said, a lot of people that are salaried employees, they've got this regular withholding tax that's already going to the CRA on their behalf. It's a little bit different, the planning that you have to do for business owners or contractors or someone that's a proprietor, self-employed, has income that is more directly under their control and might be doing their own remittances and may have some discretion over timing of salary decisions, if they're paying themselves a salary or a dividend or what that's going to look like. So let's break it down by taxable income. When someone has a higher taxable income, and we determine what that is based on the province that they live in and what their marginal tax rate is at that particular point in time when we're having the conversation, then what I like to do to help them set themselves up for another win at the next tax season is to look at an RSP or a retirement savings strategy. And the reason this works well for people that have a higher income is because there's usually a little bit more to go around. So they're probably already applying some money towards their other goals, and new money or found money, if we can put that in a place that will then again next year generate more found money, that's a giant win across the board because we've now perpetuated the success. So the RSPs, whether it's a lump sum or a regular pre-authorized contribution strategy, you're setting yourself up for another win next year. And you're setting yourself up with some extra accelerant to achieve a major life goal, which is retirement for a lot of people. And this is so important for us to do now because so many of us these days don't have that defined benefit pension plan. More of us have this defined contribution pension plans or nothing at all. So a lot of us are finding ourselves in this position where we have to do that heavy lifting for ourselves. And again, if you're in a higher tax bracket, getting a refund when you're at a higher tax rate is a wonderful thing as well. Now, let's look at the person that maybe has a lower income. Their priorities might be a little bit different. They might be a little bit less concerned with saving for retirement today. I mean, maybe money is already stretched and they find themselves in a position where they need that capital. And this is just a happy coincidence that at this time when something broke down or they needed the money, here it is. It's kind of magically come in from their tax return, and that's great. Other people, regardless of income, so stepping outside of this strategy for just a minute, if there is consumer debt, high interest debt, regardless of your income level, paying that off can help free up a cash flow for you that can be incredibly positive over the long term in the sense that it will now continue to give you more found money. So paying off debt and making sure that your lifestyle habits have also changed so that you're not reacquiring the debt can be incredibly important as well. But let's go back to the person that's earning a little bit less taxable income, and retirement may not be top of mind. So for a number of reasons, the RSP strategy is not what they're looking for right now. Maybe there's something else that they have as a goal that's more pressing for them to achieve. Now, liquidity can be one of the biggest concerns here, because if I put someone in an RSP and that's all they have, and they find themselves in a position where they have to access that again later, I haven't done them any favors at all, because they could be pulling that money out on top of their regular income and paying more tax than they even got back in that refund potentially. It'll change, of course, person by person with the circumstance. So liquidity becomes such an important factor in this scenario because that accessibility of that fund can be so important. And I mean, TFSAs are a great answer to this liquidity question in my mind, because you can get out not just what you put in, but your gains as well, completely tax-free. And that's a beautiful thing. So if I have a more immediate goal, and I mean, again, income aside here, if I have a more immediate goal than my long-term retirement savings, the TFSA might make more sense to me just from that accessibility point of view. So when I'm thinking about it like that, if someone is higher income and can benefit from the RSP and have the cash flow available to do so, and they're already kind of on track for some of their other goals, doing that RSP first can be beneficial. And for someone else, well, there is still benefit of tax deferral and things like that with an RSP strategy. If there's even a potential for needing this money later, a TFSA strategy might make more sense. And if there is definitely a point where accessibility is going to be something important to them in the future, we would definitely not be locking that money into an RSP where you have to be thinking long term. Of course, there are other vehicles as well, depending on your goals. There's FHSAs, there's RESPs. Both types plans are set up for specific things that you're trying to achieve. And of course, if your goal is in alignment with one of those accounts, absolutely it makes sense to pursue that further as well. So in a very roundabout way, that is nothing like what I said to the interviewer. But as we work through these processes ourselves, we kind of learn a little bit more as we go, right? And as you kind of finish a conversation, reflect on the conversation, and think it through a little bit further, I think there was extra insight for me that I was happy to share with you today. So we hope you found some value in that. Hope that you can survive these trying economic times as we are. And until next time, take care.
And all the best.
Welcome. Nope.
Go away. Go away from this podcast.
Please don't. We need you.